The average person in a retirement account right now doesn't have more than $400,000. That's the average fund in a 401k or IRA, about 400,000. If you have $1 million, an advisor is going to tell you you're going to live off about $40 to $50,000 a year in a really good rate after taxes. Most people don't have a million. So, and most people can't live off. If you're in California, you can't live off 40,000, right? It's impossible. So all these things together were just kind of making my mind go and think like, hey, I have to do something different. Even if I'm in this industry, I don't think this is the best solution for everybody. It works for some people, but I don't think it's for everybody. But also, I don't want to be put in this situation, right? And so what do I start doing? And I was making money, doing all these things. And I said, you know what? Now I have to pay taxes. And I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew all the tax loopholes. I'm like, we have strategies, we have deferred accounts, we have pay tax now, pay later, we have insurance products, we have all these things. But I was looking at the numbers. I'm like, I still have to give Uncle Sam a lot of money. And this doesn't make sense, right? So what am I supposed to do? And that's when real estate came into the picture originally, right? I said, okay, I got to get some real estate. I got to do something with this, right?
Welcome to Rigs to Riches. I'm Casey Gregersen, engineer turned investor, family man, and your guide to building real estate wealth the smart way. If you're out there pulling long shifts, running teams, or just flying back from the rig or that long business trip just in time for that family dinner, you're in the right place. Each week, I sit down with guests who walk the walk. Some of these are operators doing flips, rentals, multifamily, creative deals, buying businesses, and others are professionals who will help you actually understand things like taxes, underwriting, or financing, and much more, so that you can invest wisely, even if you're short on time. Whether you're looking for your first deal or trying to buy back your time, we've got you covered. This is Rigs to Riches, where we talk freedom, family, and flipping the script on your finances. All right, welcome to Rigs to Riches. I'm excited to share a special guest with you guys today. He actually was just at our Revive Summit a couple weeks ago, came in, crushed it, like tremendous feedback, tremendous value. Guys, I had talked to Daniel a couple times before and learned about what they were doing, but like when he came to the summit, there was like a bunch of things that I learned. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many things, more things to unpack. So I'm excited to dive into it today with Rigs to Riches, but you guys are going to love Daniel's story, which we're going to get into. And then I'm going to let Daniel share a little bit more of like the tools and tricks that he's found and used to build wealth. Because guys, again, the theme of this podcast is to help you guys build your own wealth, right? Go from rigs to riches. Daniel's going to give you guys some tools today, some tools that even I don't know of yet that we're going to unveil. And I'm going to learn them today from Daniel. So with that, Daniel, well, go ahead and introduce yourself. So you're in Las Vegas right now, but I want to hear like, bring us all the way back to the beginning.
The beginning. Well, first of all, Casey, thank you so much for having me on. We really appreciate it. OPM Mastery's proud to be able to go out, help you guys and, bring some education and bring anything that we can, honestly, to help your guys get to the next level. So we really do appreciate that. So going back, man, I obviously was not born in Las Vegas, as lots of people are. Not really, right? It's a very, very weird city to be in growing up. So I was born in Monterey, California. So upper California, and my parents were out there. We had some family businesses and everything. But honestly, the market there just, trying to break into it if you're not already a billionaire is kind of hard, right? You're talking Pebble Beach, you're talking Carmel Valley, right? There's a lot of wealth there, but it is definitely hard to get started there. So they moved me here to Vegas when I was about 7. So I still say I grew up in Vegas, because those are what I really remember. And this city is very different. And I think I can attribute a lot of my growth and my perspective on money and finance and just kind of like what's possible in the world in growing up in the city. So when I think about Vegas, I don't necessarily think about the casinos and like the stuff people think about, right? When they think Vegas, what I think about is just kind of understanding this is a city of hustlers, movers, shakers, right? A lot of people just working really, really hard to go make something of themselves. But because you are around a lot of fast money, you kind of get a different perspective, right? So originally my plan was, hey, go to school, get my business degree, double major, do all those things. But at the same time, I was like doing anything I could to get ahead, working summer jobs, did a lot of sports, did martial arts. I love that. But I wanted to grow up. I wanted to go make money, wanted to do those things, right? I went from working like $8 hour jobs at pizza places to working at kiosks. The really annoying people at the mall that you kind of avoid, that you walk past, they try to sell you stuff. Yeah, I was one of those guys. That was my first introduction to sales, right? And they pay commission, which is nice, right? So that's where I was learning, commission is a good place to be. You can make some
Daniel,
more
I
money.
could totally see you working that job, man.
Yeah,
totally
it was 16, I was like doing whatever I can. But honestly, I didn't really love that industry. I didn't like how it's very salesy. It's very, you're there all day just trying to get someone to buy that. They don't actually need any of these things, right? There's stuff you don't need.
Yeah.
So I got over it pretty fast. At the beginning, obviously, I was young, I was excitable. And after I realized, like, yeah, I don't think this is somewhere I want to stay. I was still going to school. I was 17, turning 18. I was getting, tired of the industry, and I was working at Caesar's Palace in the Forum Shops. It's familiar, the casino,
Oh
where
yeah.
Caesar lived. uh, and the Forum Shops has a lot of wealth. They have, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Hublot, Rolex. They had all these other stores. By the way, I didn't even know there was a high-end watch store at the time in the mall. I was just, working at my little kiosk selling phone accessories. And I remember I saw this gentleman just always walking by, super happy. The guy was just happy all the time. I said, I just want to be happy. I didn't know what he did. I just know he wore a suit and he was happy, right? So one day I just stopped and I said, hey, like, why are you so happy? He's like, well, first of all, life's great. God's great, right? And he was
Yeah.
just going on that. He's like, but I have a good job too. I was like, okay, cool. And so what do you do? He said, I worked at Tourneau, which is at the time, the one in the Forum Shop was the world's largest watch store, 17,000 square feet of watches, right? And he was something you would call a technician, which just means you just kind of clean watches, change batteries, set time for the people that have money and come in and buy Rolexes and all that expensive stuff, right? So I said, that sounds like a great job. I should totally get a job there, right? And long story short, I went, I kind of applied. It was a couple of months of follow-ups. I pretty much annoyed the service manager into hiring me because I kept calling every 2 days to check the status of the hiring process. I was persistent. I didn't have anything else, but I was persistent, right? So I got the job. I was excited. I was getting paid $12 an hour, full time. I thought that, like, this is great. I get a little bit of commission by cleaning watches. I actually get to wear dress clothes all day and I can just study for school. There was not a lot of work to be done. So all that meant is I get to study for school all day. They're actually going to help me pay for school and I don't have to really work super hard anymore. And this is a good basis for me. I was thinking I can build a career off this. I'll go get a degree, do everything I needed to do, right? 3 months later, I was bored. I was very, very bored. And I was like, yeah, I want to go do something else. So sales positions opened up. I, decided I should like try it out, right? Maybe I can make some more money. And I saw these sales guys, I mean, they're selling Rolex, Patek, Vacheron, Long & Son, Jaeger LeCoultre, words I couldn't pronounce before, right? AP, all these 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, $200,000 watches. And so I was now seeing like, okay, money is everywhere. It's not as scarce as I thought it was, right? Because I would start seeing it every day and, I see employees making good money. I said, okay, well, maybe I can, use this. Maybe I can come out of college without debt, right? Because I knew some salespeople made six figures. So I said, maybe I can use this and still do well and still go to school. And so I went and got a sales job, did really good for 3 months. And then Rolex ambassador is what they call them, where the only brand that they have to sell is Rolex. So what does that mean? Casey walks in and Casey wants to buy a Rolex. I'm the first person he talks to. I sell him a Rolex right then and there. But let's say Casey walks in and he wants to buy a G-Shock for his son instead. I can go ahead and send him 50 feet backwards and someone else can sell them a $100 watch. Right. So you're making commission, right? So you can kind of dictate what your money is going to look like because you can decide who you want to work with. Whereas a person in the back, they don't really have a choice. They can only work with whoever ends up back there. And first year I made six figures. And that's kind of when I restarted thinking everything, right? So I went from I was going to make $30,000 that year to making over 100,000 with still no degree. I only spoke two languages. They wanted you to speak 4 to 6 languages with a business degree or a master's degree or some type of background in high-end sales because you're speaking with people with money, right? So perspective started changing. And to be honest with you, I hated accounting. It's fantastic and you need to do it. You need to hire someone to do it for you. But I couldn't do it, right? I did not want to do it anymore. I love math. I love numbers, but not by putting it in little boxes like that. It wasn't fun, right? It wasn't fun until we entered a different era and different market. I was there for 3 years. I did really well. I sold almost $17 million in watches. I thought that was where I wanted to be, but 60, 70, 80 hours, working crazy. It was a European company, so no overtime pay. 40 hours, you clock out. And if you want to stay and sell, you stay on the floor and any overflow people that are there, that's who you get to sell to. So I turned a W-2 income into something that I could kind of grind out and have a very high level income in, right? So I was able to do very well. I got to have the cars I wanted, the watches, I had the M3s, I had a 4 Series, I had Rolexes, I had the luxury apartment. I was 20 years old, turning into 21, right? I was in Las Vegas. So I thought I was like doing fantastic, right? I said, I'm ahead of the game. This is good. I can go figure. I still had no idea what I was going to do yet, right? And I think the biggest lesson I got to learn from that watch industry was that I got to explore different career options, right? I met everyday people with so many different types of jobs, right? Whether it was HVAC or even in the oil industry. I did meet a couple people that were there, people that own franchises, they were advisors, they were this, they were. So I got to kind of explore. Because I hung out with my clients, you know, it was literally, I got paid to hang out with people. And then at the end, we would do some type of transaction. I met Sean White. I talked to him for like an hour and a half before knowing that it was Sean White because he had just cut his hair, right? I still sold him like $40,000, $60,000 worth of watches. And I just had a great time, right? So I got to talk to people and I said, you know, I don't have the skill level to be an Olympian. So I need to look at my other options, right? And so at the end of the day, I realized I needed to get into some type of business. And since I didn't have a clear route, what I decided is that, hey, I'm going to go learn finance. And I don't think I'm going to stay in school for it. I'm going to go get a license. I'm going to get an insurance license. I'm going to go learn retirement planning. Because if I can understand money, if I can understand how it works in the marketplace, if I understand how wealthy people have been moving it, using it to live off of, doing all these things, then maybe I can figure out how to do it for myself, right? As I'm making more money. So I had a little bit of an ego check, right? With my regular job. I was tired of working so many hours. I thought I was, you know, the end all be all. I thought I was too valuable to get rid of, right? And Casey, the one thing we learned in the W-2 world, right, is that's not true, right? You're always replaceable. And I learned my lesson, right? I fought back with some things that I didn't like with the way things were being ran. Not necessarily the company was great. And I was given two choices. I was given, keep acting this way and you're going to get demoted, right? And the alternative was just, you know, do what they wanted me to do. So my brilliant choice as a turning 21-year-old in Las Vegas, right, that was making good money, decided that this is the time for me to quit my job with no plan in place and no savings, right? My savings was my watch collection. That was about it. So I got into the insurance financial services industry right after that. First year was rough to say the least. So
What year was this?
This was 21. So this is 6.5 years ago.
2021. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Or you were 21.
6.5 years ago. So I was
Okay.
I was 21, not 2021. So that would have been like 2019, 2018, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So before COVID, right? Before that.
Mhm.
And so I got into financial services. I was in so much debt, right? Because I kept living like I was making the money that I was from my W-2, and I wasn't. So that ended very quickly. I would say it lasted another 6 months or so. Credit cards got maxed out, cars got repossessed. It was all downhill, right? And that first year in the financial industry, I made about $30,000. So it's basically saying like I went from making close to 300,000. I had a drop shipping business at the same time. It was just kind of a side business. I wasn't really focused on it, but it did well. So I went from making 300,000 a year to 30,000. So couldn't pay my bills, lost everything. And that's kind of when I had to reevaluate things, right? And say, okay, I have to put myself in check. I have to put my ego aside and I have to go into learning mode. Then second year picked back up, going into third year, which was COVID, right? So 2018, 2019, going into 2020 before everything got closed down, I was doing well in the insurance industry. And I decided, you know, this is the perfect time to open a 7,000 square foot office. So all my agents can come in person and train and be here. And I had like 60, 65 licensed agents at the time doing business, right? Which sounds like a fantastic thing to be, right? And then what happened? COVID hit. And we had just taken on this lease that we couldn't really afford yet. Like we were making the money, but it was obviously cutting into our lifestyle, me and my partner. And it was a big wake up call. And we had to buckle down, make it happen. Thankfully, everything turned out okay. We were able to do Zoom business, do fairly well and everything. But I started to see within servicing clients and retirement planning, doing all these other things, I realized that the number one reason that people couldn't put money away was not because they weren't disciplined, was not because they didn't want to save, was not because they didn't want to have a future. It's because they couldn't. And mostly due to credit, right? Having bad credit was a majority factor because car payments were more expensive than they needed to be. Car insurance was more expensive than they needed to be. Everything in life is just more expensive when you don't have good credit. And so that's when I sought to find a partner to help with that, right? So originally Felix with OPM Mastery and everything, I went to them and said, hey, I need a solution for my clients. I just want to help my clients. So I wasn't even trying to get into the credit space. I just wanted to provide a solution for my clients because I said, hey, if we can get them in a good position again, I can find the money, right? My job as helping with retirement planning was find the money in their bills and expenses on all these things. I said, okay, so if we can get you from a 500 credit score to 720, we can refinance your car. Your car payment goes from 750 to 500 or 450. Your car insurance drops $100 a month. Everything is just less expensive. And now we've opened up $400 to $500 a month, right? And traditional retirement planning, that's enough to do something, right? That's enough to do something. But the more and more I was in the industry, I just realized that I didn't really love traditional retirement planning anymore because I didn't believe that the way it was structured and the way we were taught to do it really works anymore in the country we live in, right? And it's not anyone directly's fault. It's just the systems that were built to work don't make sense for the amount of people that we have and what it costs to live today. The three pillars of traditional retirement planning were a 401k or IRA, right? Which is fine. You get it through a job. You had a pension plan, right? And then you have Social Security. But the reality is, Casey, we're not going to see Social Security by the time we get to retirement. It's just not really going to be there, right? And every other year they're running out of money, right? Like you go to the Social Security website, it'll tell you, hey, we're going to run out of money by 2030. And then next year updates and it says we're going to run out of money by 2035. And then we're going to run out of money by 2040, right? So they're still spiraling to figure out where the money's coming from. Why? Well, because we weren't made to live this long. On average lifespans when Social Security was created, we were passing away between 55 and 65. So you know what I mean? Like there wasn't a long time of money that needed to be paid. Well, life expectancy changed. We're getting 80, 90 years old. Now it's get drawn out more. There's not enough money for everybody. Same thing with pension plans. They don't really exist anymore. You're in the oil industry is probably one of the few places you still see them. Yeah. I don't know if you still see pensions and stuff, right?
Yeah, we did, which was a rare thing for sure.
Which is a rare thing, but even then they're not guaranteed. The Cal State PERS, California PERS for Department of Education had a pension that failed, right? And then the government steps in. There's resources and protections, but a pension is already only meant to pay 40% of what you used to make. When the government steps in to save a failed fund, they only pay 40% of whatever you were supposed to have there. So it's not enough money either. And again, why? Because pensions were created when we didn't live long enough. So that's why more and more companies don't do it anymore. So that doesn't work anymore. And then a 401k and IRA are great products and they can work, right? If you have the capital put away, if you started long enough. But even then, the average person in a retirement account right now doesn't have more than $400,000. That's the average fund in a 401k or IRA, about 400,000. Right? If you have $1 million, an advisor is going to tell you you're going to live off about $40,000 to $50,000 a year in a really good rate after taxes, right? After taxes. Most people don't have $1 million. So, and most people can't live off. If you're in California, you can't live off 40,000, right? It's impossible. So all these things together were just kind of making my mind go and think like, hey, I have to do something different. Even if I'm in this industry, I don't think this is the best solution for everybody. It works for some people, but I don't think it's for everybody. But also, I don't want to be put in this situation, right? And so what do I start doing? And I was making money, doing all these things. And I said, you know what? Now I have to pay taxes. And I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew all the tax loopholes. I'm like, we have strategies, we have deferred accounts, we have pay tax now, pay later, we have insurance products, we have all these things. But I was looking at the numbers. I'm like, I still have to give Uncle Sam a lot of money. And this doesn't make sense, right? So what am I supposed to do? And that's when real estate came into the picture originally, right? I said, okay, I got to get some real estate. I got to do something with this, right? Then you learn about cost segregation studies and all these other things. And then for me personally, I went the short-term rental route. I said, I want to be able to make some cash on this so I can kind of accelerate the growth of this. And, you know, we were able to figure out how to not pay some taxes legally, right? IRS tax code is mostly about not paying taxes the right way, fund the economy, and then don't pay taxes. That's what you do. Yep. That kind of started there. And then I said, okay, well, I want to do this again, but now my capital's tied up. I'm making money, but I still don't have enough to keep buying properties the way I want to buy them. And accessing more capital through OPM Mastery, through credit, and kind of seeing what other clients were already doing, right? Because we knew people were coming to us to get money, but they were doing it for fix and flips and all these other things. And I just didn't understand those things yet. And that's kind of where things just started taking off. I think as a whole, the market in the US started to realize that no one was going to come save them anymore. They knew no one was going to be able to rescue them anymore. They knew it. This is like, if we don't save ourselves, no one's coming to get us. And that's the truth. Right? That's the truth. Right. Our market exploded. We saw a lot of people coming in, starting businesses, doing their own thing, and not having to rely on anyone else anymore. Right? And I thought about the same thing. I said, okay, I have to build something. At the end of the day, the more you build, the more stable you are. Even when you lose, right, you have an ability to recover. You have resources to pull from. and you learn a lot through the process. But yeah, that's the long-winded story of how, working at a kiosk, I ended up buying real estate and getting into, credit, working with partners like Felix and OPM. And first of all, that guy's just a genius, right? His systems that he set up in place, and just understanding the credit system to a whole nother level. This guy's always thinking 4 to 6 years ahead. So now there's a lot of people entering the funding space, which is fine. I believe there's more than enough for everybody, right? Especially in a commerce space, being in a country like America, you have the opportunity to buy, try, and fail, and try again, right? You can always do it again, and there's more than enough for everybody. So I absolutely I believe in that open market of capitalism when it comes to that. But we already knew this was happening. And this is, we already have the next phase in place. We're already thinking ahead. We're prepared. So it's a good place to be, and it's cool to see just a lot of people waking up. I would call it waking up. Taking control and not having to rely on just W-2 companies to keep you in place. I think that mindset shift is super important to the country.
Yeah, man, it's so good. Well, I love where you're going with all that. I'm going to back up just a little bit and talk about the transition. So to recap. Yeah, you worked the mall kiosk, you jumped to the next job, and it was just like kind of continue to reset. But eventually you realized that you got to get some exposure to real estate. But it sounded like also too, you're like, hey, how do you figure out this debt question? And how do you leverage your credit? And you saw other people using their credit and essentially using debt in the right way to grow their wealth. So how did that, I want to hear like when you joined OPM, when you met Felix, and how this is like, because it sounds like that's one of the biggest catalysts to not only help you personally, help you professionally, and now you're helping more people.
Right. So it's funny. I joined OPM prior to me really starting to acquire real estate, but it just hadn't clicked. It was fun. I literally had the answer right in front of me, but it didn't click for me yet. Right. Mm-hmm. I think it's hilarious because I was talking to people about it all the time. I'm like, yeah, you can just use your 0% card. You can just pull it from here and leverage. But essentially, as I was transitioning with OPM, I still had my insurance brokerages and everything, and they were making money. That industry is beautiful. And if you do it right, it can eventually turn into something that's on autopilot. With that said, though, there's a lot of variance, which is why I was looking for something that was more stable. And that was, I call it recession-proof in a different way, right? Because technically real estate is recession susceptible, but depending what type of model you operate, you can make it recession-proof, right? So my idea was, if I create a cash flowing business and I treat this as a cash flowing business, then it doesn't necessarily matter what happens with my equity today, tomorrow, or a year from now. I can wait it out 10 years, 5 years, whatever happens in the market, right? If I have something that's paying the money, paying the bills, and also providing cash flow for me and my family, then it doesn't matter. I can wait. You know what I mean? I can weather the storm. And with the insurance industry, you can't do that. You have to find more deals. There's always something that has to happen. Even if you have an organization, you have agencies selling and all this stuff. And when it comes to the market, I will say the market is evergreen, which is different, which is cool, right? If the market's good, it's a good time to put away money in that side of the industry. If the market's bad, it's a good time to protect money in that side of the industry. So there's that benefit. But there's always one after another. You don't have an asset that's building, right? Your agency is supposedly your asset. And so I was looking for different answers, right? And working with OPM, I was in there in the sales funnels. I was having fun. I was letting people know, like, this is the credit system. This is how it works. This is how you access capital. I had got the first property. I was working on the second property. And then I was out of money, right? And I was like, well, I need liquid. How do I buy more property? I don't want to go wait again to go qualify for another type of loan and then live in it for a year and then, move into one. Like, I'm like, this is not the life I want to live. I get it. It works. And if you have no other choice, like, absolutely. I tell people all day long, go get a fourplex, live in what, like, if you have to grind it out to get that first step in, then do it. But at that point, like, I didn't want to do that. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So how can I kind of collapse these time frames without having to wait X amount of time to qualify for a different type of product, or without Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac getting mad at me because I have too many loans already, right? So what's my opportunity? What's my resources?
Daniel, and that's when I love what you're saying. I want to really highlight it and let you keep going. But I have this same thought, right? Like, and I had when I bought my first couple. Yeah, you bought the first one, you bought the second one, and you've got the bug now. You're like, I want to do more of this. Yeah. But you start looking at your W-2 and other sources of income. You're like, oh crap, I could do like one of these a year if I'm lucky. Like, exactly. I had the same realization. I'm like, but how do I do more? And once you get the confidence from that first or second one, it's just game on. And I think that's what you're saying, right? Like, it's such a good way to start, to go buy the fourplex and live in it. Or if you just go buy your a house and fix it up, you and your wife,
Anything,
or you and your girlfriend, or
anything.
just yourself, you and your buddies. Such a good way to start, because then you start to get the proof of concept, you get confidence, and then if you want to supercharge it, I'm gonna turn you loose again, Daniel. But how did you start to figure out how to supercharge it?
You're right. I think that's such a big point that we have to hit on. Just get one. Just start with one. Do one. And like your perspective just changes so dramatically. Because I have people all the time like, oh, but I don't think I should buy a house. 'Cause I'm like, just buy it anyways. Just buy it anyways. Rent out the rooms. Stay in it. Like, and they're like, yeah, but why don't I just live in it? But I'm like, well, you don't want to live there. You're telling me it's not where you want to live. It's not the area you want to be in. It's not all these other things. So buy it anyways. They're like, but what if it's not actually just cash flowing and making all this money? Okay, get equity then, right? Build, leverage, slowly work on some type of remodel on the back of it, build an ADU in it while the property is just growing equity by itself. Maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, you'll have access to another 50 to 100,000 that you wouldn't have had if you didn't do this just one deal, right? And yeah, so that 1,000%, but accelerating, right? And accelerating, I said, okay, so how do I speed up timeframes? Obviously, at this point, I had fixed my credit, right? It took some time. We fixed those mistakes, and I said, okay, I can start accessing my own capitals. And I was trying to understand. I didn't even know you could pull money from credit cards yet, right? We were kind of teaching it, but I didn't really understand the concept. Felix just said, this is how it works, and talk to people about it. I said, fantastic, right? So whenever people would ask me that question, right, like, how do I liquidate, Daniel? I'm like, it's a fantastic question. We can absolutely help you. Our advanced team is going to help you out with that. They'll give you 3-4 different options and we'll go from there. I had no idea what the 3 or 4 different options were back then, right? But now understanding, okay, cost of money. I was looking at the alternatives, and at the time I wasn't super savvy, right? So I was just looking at traditional stuff, and they said, well, we want to see all these numbers. And in my head, I'm like, well, I wrote off all my stuff in taxes, so I make no money, right? I didn't even know bank statement loans were a thing back then. I didn't know owner finance was a thing back then, right? I didn't know a lot of this stuff existed. So the first stuff was just, hey, pull money off 0% credit cards, season the funds, qualify for a loan. I was like, well, that only took me 2 months. It didn't take me a year. I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good. Maybe we can figure out it now. And I will say this, in Vegas, 2020 to 2025 now, we had an insane market growth. Like it was ridiculous, right? It's not a traditional market. So doing cash out refis here was, we were being able to pull liquid out and do all these crazy things. That's not normal in most markets. So take that money, pay back the cards. I said, okay, but now my 0% run out, right? So what do I do now? Well, you can get extensions, you can get more 0%. You can also say, hey, I was only able to pay off half and I want to get more because I want to do another deal, but I don't necessarily qualify yet. Well, now you look into bridge loans. And bridge loans is just a term, right? Bridge loans can be anything. It can be hard money, it can be private money, it can be traditional loans, it could be a line of credit with a lower interest rate than what you were about to pay on the cards. There's so many different ways to go about it, right? Casey, once you have your mindset to like finding a way to make it happen, all these doors just magically start to open and you get connected to like, oh yeah, of course we could have done that, right? Where if we had had that information 3 years ago, I'm like, I would have bought 10 more properties by now, right? And then that's kind of where the scaling happened, because properties, again, also market Vegas, it was cash flowing. Now we have a whole battle with casinos and this whole other conversation, right? But we were making short-term rental Airbnb money that wouldn't be made anywhere else, right? Where do you see someone staying 6 nights, employees working the F1 event, staying 6 nights, right? Paying $12,000 for, they're not even going to be there. They're just there to sleep, shower, and go back to work as employees. No, there's no market where that really happens, right? It's weird. It's different. So it was just more cash flow. And instead of just living off that cash flow, the number one thing we said, I just want to get as much as I can, because I think a lot of people try to ride the wave too long, right? They would stick in one thing, like, this is amazing. I'm just going to get, like, I'm going to live off this. That's what they use to feed their lifestyle. That's what gives them their cars. That's what gives them, the trips and all these other things. And then when it does go away, I know we'll answer the questions at the end, but I think one of the things I do differently than investors is making sure I'm providing that security for when it does go wrong, right? Not hoping that it does, not saying that it will, and not being pessimistic in any way, but being prepared for the worst. So I always have the best outcome. So the worst case scenario happens. What do I do? What are our options? What happens when the city, because of lawsuits going on back and forth, and decides to put a lien on your house for $300,000 and it's only worth $400,000? What do you do?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's scary. And if you only have one property, that's really scary. So the idea was, well, I got to offset liability as much as I can. If I have 20 properties, 15 properties, 30 properties, am I super scared when one is under pressure or, in trouble? No, because I have resources now to leverage from to go find a solution, right? But if I only have one, if I don't move, and if I don't continue moving, if I don't continue dispersing my liability or creating security for myself, then I'm putting myself in a position where I could make worse decisions because I don't have anything to back me up. That's another thing why it's not just houses, right? It's more credit lines, more loans available, more things available to me so that if something does go wrong, I have an answer and I have a solution. And I think in general, that's why most businesses fail, right? They're optimistic with what will happen. They know something bad could happen, but they don't prepare for if it does happen.
Love it. One of my favorite books is I don't know if you've read it, The Road Less Stupid. It's a funny title, but it's this old school guy, and that's all he's talking about. He's like, you guys, if you're not thinking like this, you should be, because just talk to all these other people. But it sounds like, did a lot of that shape from like the kind of the ups and downs you had when you had those peaks and valleys?
Yes, and also honestly, just a lot of access to mentorship. I think that it's so valuable. It's so undermined by people because they don't understand what they really get out of it. In the insurance industry, I worked for Patrick Bet-David for years, got to have some direct mentorship from him. And I think he shaped a lot of where my mindset came from as well. Just work ethic and understanding strategies, scalability, systems, and more long-term thinking, right? The books that they had us read, the framing, the understanding, and hearing their stories of the situations that they went through too also better prepares you and think like, wow, I didn't think that could happen. I didn't even think that was a possibility of something bad that can go wrong. I should probably have a backup plan in place for something like that, right? And again, it's not to be afraid of the world, but it's to be prepared, right? And the more prepared you are, you're just avoiding all these pitfalls and everything else. And it's things that you're buying for mentorship, right? The whole situation with the lien costs $20,000 to fix, and we saved 300,000. However, if that was my first property, if I didn't have mentors, if I didn't have people to leverage, if I didn't have any of those things and that had happened, I probably would have just lost the property. I wouldn't have had the resources and spent the money prior to create those relationships and those people to call. And then eventually, learning stuff like sub two, hearing different communities out there, seeing what they're doing, and then going to pay to actually understand how this process works, not just doing it randomly and guessing. And you know what? I also did do that, right? I also did do it wrong. And we had some stuff that failed. We had stuff that went wrong. And it just goes back to reminding me like, yeah, I probably should have just paid for the mentorship. You're paying for a shortcut. You're paying for time that you can't buy, right? It's my way, I think, of what I would call as perceiving as buying time. Because it's the one thing we can't buy, right? We can't get more time. We can't get it back. We only have a certain amount it's going to run out for us. But if I can buy 10 years of someone's time and experience and get that for a certain amount of dollars, that's the only way I can really buy it, right? That's the way I can buy. I can buy the information, and that allows me to move faster and not make the same mistakes that all these other people already did.
Yeah, Danny, you highlighted two huge components to ensure success, and it's all based on resources, right? You mentioned having the resources for when things go bad, right? And because if you have resources or access to capital, credit, or something, it can help you weather a storm, which I love. Yep. But then also just the resources to solving problems. And biggest thing I've learned over the years too, like because early on I didn't have it. I was probably like you, right? We don't have as much resources. We're hustling. We're just figuring it out. But then as we start to join these other masterminds, be around the right people, then you're just like, any problem is just a matter of where do you find the right resources? And when you have them and you know them, holy cow, it's solving problems becomes a lot easier, right?
So much easier because instead of guessing to figure out who can actually help, hey, here's 5 people that can help you in this exact situation. They helped XYZ amount of people in similar situations. Here's the number one person I recommend. Here's 2, 3, like call them, find a solution, and stuff just gets solved. You're not having to go figure it out by yourself, especially with like Rigs to Riches. I think your audience being in the W2 world, a lot of people end up creating jobs for themselves when they're trying to get into this industry instead of creating passive income assets and growth, right? Because we want to do it ourselves, right? And it's nothing bad against it. It's just we weren't like, as W2s, we're not really taught how to delegate, right? Casey, like,
yeah.
And you now know, as being who you are, like the Casey with 50 million in assets, delegating helps you get there. That's how you get there. That's how you get to build. That's how you get there. You can't get to where you're at without learning to delegate or being able to use those resources. I had a family friend cousin reach out to me. They're taking over family business and stuff. And, they're asking me all these questions, and it's great. And I'm happy to help and stuff. We were going over these things. And I kind of told him like, hey, it really kind of sounds like, I'm more than happy to help, but it kind of sounds like you need an accountant or you need a CPA for this specific thing. and you need some other help, right? They're like, yeah, but I kind of want to just do it myself right now. We had another conversation for like another 30 to 45 minutes. And just in that time, he was losing like 20% of his business because of how he was doing accounting, and I'm like, hey, this is why you need this. You just made 20% back because you can fix this now. Do you see why you need a CPA? Do you see why you need an accountant? He said, yeah, okay, I'll go listen, right? But if we didn't have that conversation, he wouldn't realize he was losing 20% off the top end because of how he was doing his numbers. Just little simple thing, right? And that might seem like not a big deal, but the bigger in business a business gets, the more holes really affect it, right? And I'm sure you know, Casey, right? Cost of carrying money is super, super, super important. Your expenses are super important. If you want to make money, if you want to come on top, and that's why you work with partners and professionals to make sure the numbers are right. But that's why people go in all the time, they flip a property and they come out negative. Not just because, I mean, it happens to everybody, but if you notice it just keeps happening to one specific person, there's probably a reason for it. And a lot of times it's just because they don't want to ask for the help. They don't want to ask for the resources. They don't want to pay for the additional resources. And I've learned my lessons. That it's 10 times more worth it to pay for those assets, for that leverage, for those resources than trying to figure something out yourself that is just not your strongest suit.
Yeah. Well, before we go into our final 4 questions, our freedom 4, Daniel, let's go right there. Let's talk resources. I want you to give the audience some resources I know you've shared with our people at Revive Summit and maybe start base level and kind of like 0% interest credit cards. But then I also want to hear a little bit about the more advanced stuff, because that's what I started to get excited about, like the unsecured lines of credit, like the layers and the levels as you start to understand this sort of these financing hacks. And guys, this is gold. Like this is stuff that like I've learned over the years and I've learned the hard way. Like Daniel's about to break it down so you don't have to figure it all out like I did. Like he's known it. So anyway, give us a couple gold nuggets, Daniel.
Absolutely. So number one thing you do before anything else is you find out where your credit score actually is. And no, this is not from Credit Karma. This is not from your bank app that tells you have a 780. You're going to go to like, oh, Chase tells me, Bank of America tells me, Capital One tells me what my FICO is. No, you're going to go to Experian.com or you're going to go to myfico.com and you're going to look at a FICO 8 credit score. The reason I'm being so specific is because the majority of the time, that's what the bank is actually pulling. That's what they're looking at. Now, are there some variables? Absolutely. But 9 out of 10 times, that's what they're seeing. And the reason that's important is because you might go to something like Credit Karma and say you have a 780 credit score, but the reality is you have a 710 or you have a 680 just because you're looking in the wrong place. So above all, super, super important. That's where you actually know where you're at. The secondary step is now seeing, okay, are my balances down? Or is my utilization down? You want to make sure you have a prime profile for the bank to want to lend money to you, right? And this would be very specific when it comes to not having individual maxed out cards. So a credit report on any of these sites will say, hey, if you're overall under 30% utilization, which is just the usage of a card is $10,000 limit, you're using $3,000, 30%. But overall, adding up all your limits, and if you're under 30%, then you're good to go. But the reality is banks actually start looking a little bit deeper now, and they want to make sure each individual account is under 30% utilization. That's the first thing. The second thing you want to make sure you look at is your inquiries. And in this scenario, I want you to put yourself in the perspective of the bank, right? So Casey, you're the bank in this example. You look at my credit profile and you see I have 20 to 30 inquiries, which means I went and asked for money for 20 to 30 other people. How do you feel about that, Casey? I already went and asked 20 or 30 of your friends and family for money. Now I'm coming to you to ask for money. Would you be a little concerned?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
You're going to ask me why I need the money, right?
100%.
And then you're going to want to know how much you got from all those other people. That's the same way the bank's looking at it. They don't want to lend you money for that reason. So we want to go ahead and make sure that the minimal 2 to 4 inquiries, if you need some help with that, we can obviously help as well. Then you start accessing intro products. And intro products in major banks are things like 0% interest cards, whether they're personal or business cards. Obviously, business credit cards have a big benefit in the fact that they don't report any type of utilization. So if you decide to leverage them and you have carrying costs generally with real estate, it's not going to affect your credit score, right? So if I have a $20,000 personal credit card and I max it out to invest in real estate, my credit score is going to tank because I'm maxed out utilization. If I do it on my business credit card, that doesn't show up anywhere publicly. So my personal credit score is still in a good state. Now, I probably can't go to that bank specifically and ask for more money again, but I could go to other institutions that don't see that, right? And I could still acquire some capital. But 0% cards anywhere from 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, 21 months, and they come at a 0% rate. You do have minimum payments because they are credit cards, but you're able to leverage that money, go build something with it. call it free money, right? Free money, as long as you do the right things, have the right resources, and put it into the right type of deals. They're the easiest to enter, and they're the most leverageable, right? So a lot of times people will say, hey, I saw Casey has a gold and platinum Amex, and he flies around and gets to use fancy metal cards that sound really cool when you put them on the table, but they're not really helpful for real estate, right? Those are very specific for different things, for travel, for points, for eating, but they're not going to be what you leverage because you want to invest in real estate. So I think, especially in the credit world, sometimes people get stuck on the flashy side of it and don't realize that you still have to build the foundational, right? You still got to get the fourplex. You still got to get the fourplex to build something off of that, right? And that's the first foundation. 0% cards, and you can go to creditcardmatch.com or even off Experian. I would go off Experian, just kind of see what offers are looking there. You want to stick to the big companies, right? So you don't want to be applying with lower tier cards. So if you see like the Credit One cards, you obviously don't want to apply for that. You see the One Sky, you don't want to apply for that. You want the major banks. You want Chase, Bank of America, US Bank, Wells Fargo. And specifically, I'll let you guys know there is a little hack thing that you can see for the type of limits that you can expect on certain cards. So there's partners. A Visa Signature. If you see Visa Signature, it's usually 10K and up. It could be 20K, 40K, 50K, 70K, 80K. I've even seen a $100,000 credit limit on a Visa Signature, meaning that type of card requires the highest tier of credit. They want the best possible profile. And you're going to get a decent limit. If it has a signature, it's going to do that. It's also probably going to come with an annual fee. There's going to be some things that come with it, right? Versus just a regular Visa card. So every bank and every partner has a different tier. So that's kind of a cool thing that if you just see the word signature, it could be a Chase Visa signature. It could be a US Bank Visa. There's Visa signatures. It's on its own, right? But with whatever bank, it's going to be a higher tier. So that's something kind of cool that you can look out for. But that's the first phase. Really, that's really where a lot of people start. And sometimes that's where a lot of people stay.
And higher tier, you meaning you're going to get higher limits, or higher? It's higher to get it. Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
So like they're never going to give you a $2,000 limit because that's not what that card is made for. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's like, it has to be a high limit because that card is built on a certain platform for high limits and higher quality clientele, right? So if I have a client that, let's say I know their profile isn't super strong, it doesn't even make sense for me to apply for that because it most likely wouldn't get approved. But I'll kind of give you an alternative. If I go to a Credit One card, there's no Visa Signature Credit One card. If I start at a $500 limit, that Credit One card will never, ever, ever be a $20,000 limit. Maybe $1,500, maybe $2,000. But a Visa Signature, even if I start at the lowest of $10,000, that one could eventually be $20,000, $40,000, $50,000. Like I can build on that. Does that make sense? So it's built on a platform and a card that can actually grow in limits versus some accounts that they're just not built for that. They're not on that platform because that demographic of clientele that they're trying to target doesn't exist.
Makes sense. Okay.
Different tiers, different groups of types of credit cards, right? So like Capital One is like a mid-tier bank, right? It's not the best, it's not the worst. They recently came out with their Venture X, which was meant to compete in the Amex world or Chase world. So now they have one high tier credit limit. So if you get a Venture X card, you could get a $20,000 limit, a $50,000. You could do that. But if you get like a regular Capital One, maybe 15K, maybe 20K max, but you might start at 2K or 5K or all these other things.
I wish I would have known that. I remember when I first I got like a $2,000 limit on my Capital One. I was like, why am I wasting my time?
Yeah. Also Capital One Spark. Look, I'm not talking about the bank, but it's one of the only business credit cards that reports your utilization to your personal credit.
Oh, yeah, that was it. It was a Capital One Spark that I had.
So I see it all the time, by the way, all the time. And they get one, they're like, it's a business card. They want to go through funding, right? And they're like, oh, I'm great. All my utilization's down. I get the credit report. They have maxed out utilization. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, I have a Capital One Business Spark. I'm like, okay. And it's maxed out, right? They're like, yeah, but it's business. I'm like, yeah, but it's on your credit report. So everyone sees it, but it's loaded in a project or something. And now they're shooting themselves in the foot and they can't do what they're trying to do because of it. So you start there. Then you're able to move on to like the second stuff we were talking about, Casey. And this is where you do like depository accounts, creating bank accounts with different institutions. So you mainly want to start in Class A institutions. These are the big billionaire banks, right? Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, US Bank, all that stuff. And then if you have liquid, great, you already start creating checking and savings accounts with maybe regional banks that are only available in certain marketplaces, Class B institutions, not lending to as much of America, but still a good part of it. And they're a little bit more lenient, right? And if you don't have liquid, you can pull it from the credit cards and use that to start creating relationships. You're not spending the money, you're just putting it down as deposits. You're holding the money in savings accounts 30 days, 60 days, creating relationships. And you might qualify for different products that might not be regularly available to someone who just shows up. So if I just show up to a Class B institution, regional, I want to go apply for stuff, their requirements might be more strict. They might be asking me for taxes, bank statements, and all these other things. But by simply just putting in $5,000, $10,000 in an account, sitting with them for 30 days, 60 days, I actually might just get an offer in my email saying like, hey, you qualified for a no uncollateral cash loan for 50K, up to 50K, right? Or line of credit for up to 50K. And by the way, you could probably get 80,000, 100,000, but that might require financials, bank statements, all this stuff. And they're offering you kind of like the quick, easy application, the simplified 1 day, same day, 10-minute application to get a decision. And that's the stuff that you want, right? Because now you're able to acquire more, still unsecured without having to provide all this stuff, especially if you're just starting a business. Now, if you already have it, great. Like that's the next phase. But if you don't, this is a fantastic way to start creating relationships. And like I said, you're starting by leveraging all that 0% and you already have a plan in place. 6 to 8 months from now, or 3 to 4 months from now, you already have another 100,000, 150,000 that you're going to be able to pull out and leverage. Either A, the 0% worked out perfectly, you already paid it all back, and you're going to just re-leverage 0%, or B, you can maybe leverage that to pay off all the 0%, put yourself in a position to go get another round of 12 to 15 months at 0%, and then keep going, right? And then you have affordable payments because you're structuring your debt. You're kind of understanding your payment plans. And sometimes something that has been suggested in certain cases, if the interest rate is low enough, is like, let's say you'll have 100, but you're concerned about servicing the debt. Maybe it's just something where you're holding costs and you're not going to be able to cash flow during 6 months, 8 months while it's happening. You get an additional amount of money, an extra 20 or 30,000, maybe 20 to 50,000. And you just put that separately into like a high yield savings account with like American Express or something, get at least an extra 3 or 4%. You're not making money, but you use that to service the debt that you used to invest. And so now you're not freaking out. You're not trying to like rush things wrong, because we've been there. Sometimes I've rushed a project that shouldn't have been rushed in a certain way because I just needed to get it done, right? Because I was afraid of capital. But this is all, again, strategies putting in place so you don't have to run into the same situations. And now I know, hey, this job should only take 8 months, but I can carry a year and a half without being worried about the payments or the cost of carrying. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So just being more strategic if you don't have the capital. Is that what I recommend for everybody? No, but everybody's different. And if that's something that's necessary, it could make sense, right? So again, these are all variables. You got to take a look at all that stuff, but it's something that could make sense. That you can, move on to next institutions and go ahead.
Yeah, well, go back there though, because I've always struggled from experience. Like I started to get more success. It's easier, in my opinion, to get the 0% interest credit cards, but the lines of credit, the unsecured stuff at banks has always been, and it's one that you always hear about, and you're like, people talk about it, but to me, executing on it's been harder. Like even with me in my experience, like I've struggled to get banks that will lend unsecured lines, and then they're doing it one day. Like I had a really nice line at US Bank because I'd been there for a while, and then a couple years later that got shut down, and they're just like, because I was in the middle of a bunch of fix and flips, and they looked at all my financials. They're like, oh, you got too much leverage, right? But what's the good, easy way for people to actually, is it literally just going in and start talking to all the small banks you can? Or how do you get that approved?
Yeah. So, and this is where we showed at your guys' presentation, the bank locator. Just look it up on Google. You guys can kind of see what the different types of institutions, like regional institutions and credit unions, are in your area. And you want to leverage all three, right? So when US Bank, for example, because it's a big one, they're looking at the risk threshold cross everywhere, right? Not just where you're at. And if you're over leveraged, but that's because they're worried about something else happening, right? Mm-hmm. But a regional institution or like a credit union, well, they're only lending to your area anyway. So what is their primary concern? Your area. So if your deal makes sense in your area, they want to lend to you. Number one. Number two, they have to lend to somebody, because banks make money doing what? How do they make money? Like they don't make money just by you like having money in there. Like, yes, they have federal money and then the leverage of what's in their depository accounts versus what they get from the federal government. But that's fractional banking. That's a whole other world that we're talking about. But aside from that, the primary way they're making money is by lending money, right? Mm-hmm. But they're not lending to all of America. They're only lending in that region. So you just have to make yourself attractive. So How do you make yourself attractive? You need to have a savings account with them, have some money sitting in there. And that's kind of your backup, right? So when US Bank is getting wary, before that even happens, or you're seeing that stuff going on, something going on in the market, you're noticing you're starting to get leverage. That's where you already want to already have those new relationships established and say, hey, you know what? Whatever name credit union is close by, I have XYZ amount of money in US Bank right now. I have this. They have a line of credit for me for 150, but honestly, the rate's just really not favorable. What is something you guys could do to earn my business so I could work with you guys instead, right? So it's not even so much like pleading them to give you money. Like you can make them work for you, right? Because they want to earn that business. They want to earn your type of accounts. They want to have the client that has 20 bank accounts open with them, with all have their own fee and all have their own, you know what I mean? Like they do want to have that, but you have to create those relationships. So that's what I'm saying. $5,000-$10,000 sitting in those bank accounts, seeing what type of offers and products that they have. Because the reality is they want to work with you. I had one here where I was working with a new business manager, and she just wanted more of my business. What does that mean? Because it's not just debt, right? They want to be your credit card processor. They want to see how much of your business they can absolutely get, because it's good for the bank. Like they were taking out us to baseball games and making us jerseys and they're like, hey, meet so and so from the bank. Like what else can we do for you? But that only works if you establish a relationship, if you do deposits with them, if you're bringing new accounts to the bank too. Like all of that stuff is super helpful. And I think it's a little bit undermined, right? It's not just walking in and talking to a banker. It's going in and asking for specific questions. Hey, do you guys have a new business manager? I'm interested in kind of what products you guys have. Do you guys have easy applications? Do you have same day applications? You know, what if I wanted to look at lines of credit? What are you guys' qualifications? And what do you guys lend at, right? Because at the end of the day, even if they're willing to lend you money, if they want to give it to you at 25%, it doesn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. It's really high. So how do you get them to be competitive? You make them jealous. You show them what you have already too, which is nice, and say, can you beat this? I'm about to run out of 0% here. If you can beat it, then I'll go with you guys. But if not, I'll stay at that bank, right? At the end of the day, like that's why they do sign up bonuses when you create checking accounts, when you leave one bank to another, because they want you to come. The only way you get the sign up bonuses is by depositing money or having direct deposits, right? So what does that mean? They're taking business from another bank, right? Why are they doing that? Why are they willing to give $500 to $1,000 for 1 million people to leave other banks, right? Because they need money in their bank. So an institution is only as strong as how much money they have sitting in their bank accounts, because that's how they get money from the government. There's a lot of things that you see in the marketplace when people are fearful of bank runs. All of a sudden, they start doing secured products like CDs and bonds. Because they're going to give you 4%. Like I don't know if you remember, like during COVID times and everything, when people were scared of bank runs possibly happening, where everyone wanted to pull out. So for those who don't know, a bank run is when everyone decides to go to the bank at the same time. They want to pull their cash, and the bank doesn't have the cash, and it causes instability, freakouts, all these other things, and it could make a bank go under. So a way banks protect themselves against this is they provide CDs or bonds at a really nice high rate of return. And these are secure products, right? They're guaranteed rates. And so what that does is say, hey, well, I have this money sitting in my checking account that makes me 0.0002%. I'm going to go put it in a CD for 6 months or 8 months. Now they've locked in your money where you can't take it out for a certain amount of time. And it provides, in layman's terms, safety for the bank. Now they don't look high risk to the federal government. Federal government gives them more money. And that's what they lend, right? So they have $100,000. The federal government gives them $1 million.
Yes.
That makes sense, right? They have $10 million, they get 100 million. And that 100 million is what they lend to make money on. And their rate is like 2% on that money, right?
Yeah.
So even though they're small institutions or regional or, even credit unions, they're still playing in the big world. And the second you understand that they have to lend money. So they need clients, right? Yes, you can't come in with a 400 credit score. That's not what I'm saying, right? But be attractive for them to lend to you, and then know that they do want to lend money.
That's so good.
All right. A little further, Daniel. So it'd be out. One last one before we go to the Freedom 4 is, so you talked about the 0% interest credit cards, a little bit of that. The next phase was the lines of credit, right, at the local banks. What's the more advanced one? Where would you go from there?
So it's lines of credit and loans, right? And that's usually you go regional institutions, then you go credit unions. The next step up from that is now when we get into more commercial funding. And this is stuff where we have kind of like agency debt, right? Kind of think of how we talked about like non-recourse debt. So there's like private money that's lended out in the same way that banks will lend out. And this is where they can do something called like invoice factoring, or like you're making money at this point, right? This is like the next phase. You're making money, you have cash flow, you have taxes, you have bank statements. Is that where we're at right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have that. So now it's more like, it's not so much you're shopping as they're shopping you. So now when you have a proposal, you say, hey, this is what I'm looking to get. I would like a line of credit for $1 million, 2 million, 3 million, but I'm making 8 to 10 million in revenue, right? I'm just giving a big example, but let's just say someone's making a $500,000 or $1 million, looking to get 100,000, 200,000, $500,000. I want a line of credit. I want XYZ. Cool. We'll go shop it. Now we see, okay, what brokers like these types of products? What likes these type of business entities? NAT codes, that's one. And also going back to your bank. So then there's different products that are available depending on where you're at financially. These are products that are not going to be publicly available on their website, or, just these are products that are to say, hey, you know what? We're rolling out a new line of credit, Casey, for businesses that have X amount of depository with us for X amount of time. Seems like you're pre-qualified, probably do, 100, 150,000, or, are you looking for more than that? And when they're saying that, you're generally at this point already kind of pre-approved. If you just say yes, they're pretty much just giving it to you. If you say I want more, that's when they're going to ask for more financials, right? But this is at the point where you've already created the relationships with the 0% cards. You've already created the loans. You've paid them off. You've done some lines of credit on the smaller end, 40, 50K. And now they're just like, okay, we want to do bigger business, right? And this is someone at your summit said this the other day, but it gets to the point where it's not that you're in business by yourself anymore. Now you're in business with the bank, right? Where because it is in their best priority to take care of you because you're making them money. And if you're leveraged into a certain amount of things, now it's not just your problem anymore. It's like, okay, it's their problem now. Like, what can we do to help out Casey, right? In case something does later on, you just go to that bank now. It's like, listen, in your head, you already know it's in your basic case interest to help me, but you're like, I need like a couple months with no payments or something with 0% because of XYZ is happening. You're gonna be like, of course, Mr. Casey, no problem. Let's see what we can do. You know what I mean? It's a whole different situation that happens at that point. But that's where you need 2 years of taxes. You need bank statements. They're going to want to do P&Ls. They're going to want to underwrite your debt schedule. So debt schedules are what payments you're already subject to. It's not necessarily liens or first or second positions, just all debts in general, right? They want to know what your payments look like and make sure that you're soluble enough to make payments to them as well. They're generally a little bit more favorable when it comes to the interest rates as well, because they're bigger lines, so they can make more money on those types of things.
Yes, makes sense. Okay, man, that's good. Okay, I could keep going, man, but let's do the Freedom 4. I know I teach you up for these ones, so let's go here. All right, so we answer all our questions all about financial freedom here. So the Freedom 4, here we go. Number 1, if you lost it all today, Daniel, what's the first thing you would do to get it back?
So first thing I would do is rebuild my credit. Number one thing I would do is rebuild my credit, because it's the foundation for quantum leaps in your life. It helps you hop and skip a lot of the time and the grind work that you would normally have to do. So fix my credit, number 1, and get a sales job. Or a really and the reason I say sales job is that way I'm in direct control of how much money I can make. So I can make more money faster, so I can get back into investing into things that can actually build my assets in my life back. That'd be my number 1 thing combined that I would do. Because at the end of the day, even if you get a high paying W-2 job, it's hard. Generally speaking, thinking back, I didn't have a life. My life was tied to what I had, when I had to be there, when they told me I had to be there, and that was it, right? I didn't really have a choice. And the more days I took off, the more problems it caused. And it is what it is. So sales job, make money, use that to invest, have good credit to keep leveraging and growing in. Number 1 thing.
Heck yeah. No, great answer. And it's a different one than we usually typically get. Typically, it's everybody's like network, which I know is a big one for you, but I like you give a much more tactical one.
But it's just like, what's the point of me networking if I don't have any money to do anything with anyways? Like, yeah, I could find deals, source them. I could wholesale. That's sales, right? I could be wholesaling deals.
Yeah.
And I learned that in the insurance industry, like the first 6 months, which is why my first year of business was terrible, right? I was networking. What are you doing? Networking. What are you doing? Networking. I'm fantastic. No money, no sales. I'm like, networking is cool, but it's just kind of like hanging out. Unless you can get some exchange out of it, right? Do you have something really, really good to offer to that market of networking? Or are you able to make them money in some way that allows you to make money too? But if you don't know what your skill set is yet, you don't know what you're doing yet, or you know exactly what you want to do, but you don't have enough money to do it yet, in my opinion, sometimes networking can be a waste of time in that example. Which is why I was like, well, if I have really good credit and I'm making some money at least, now if I'm networking, if there's opportunity, I can actually seize that opportunity, right? Maybe I don't have the money right now, but hey, there's 20,000 for a position of equity of XYZ amount, or to make a 15% return in a short amount of time. Let me pull it from credit cards. There you go. It's not my business yet, but I can keep making sales, which allow me to make the credit card payments and pay my bills. And now that money went and worked for me while I didn't do anything. It came back, and I can keep going, building, and moving from there.
Got it. Okay, cool. Well, perfect. Let's go to number 2. I know I teased you had one ready for this one, but what's one deal you would never do again and why?
Condo hotels. Condo hotels in Las Vegas, they are not what they're cracked up to be. And I think for me, the thing I realized is there are too many variables, which is also why I kind of want to buy a boutique hotel now so I can actually control those variables. But when you invest independently, like in one unit where there's already 300, 400 units or even 100 units, there's too many variables that you have no control over. You don't control what type of market or demographic is there. You don't control the restaurant that's built in there. You don't control what the staff is in the front, how they treat the clientele. You don't control the maintenance time. There's too many variables that you have no control over. And for that reason alone, for me, like I did it and I realized it was a huge mistake. It caused so many more issues that it became a headache that I actually had to worry about. And the whole point is when you're investing is to not have to be directly involved in all these things, right? So for me in that example, single home families made way more sense until I'm able to transition into multifamily like yourself, right? Or even like boutique hotels and things like that, where I can have more direct control of what I'm investing in. And if there's an issue and there's something wrong, yeah, it's my fault, it's my responsibility, but I can fix it. But when I don't have controls, it makes me feel like I'm back on my W-2 where I have no control to be able to fix things or get better.
Got it. Oh man, that is a new one too. I had never thought about, but that makes total sense. And live and learn, right? Sounds like yeah, it's like all of them. Okay, what's one thing I know you thought about this one, and you can go a little deeper on it if you want. But what's the one thing that you do that most other investors overlook? I know you talked a lot about the secure, like just how, like what happens, what if this? How are you secure? Like how do you backup plans? Yeah.
One thing I look at with all my deals is anything, any business model or anything else, right? I look at what is Armageddon? What is the worst, absolute worst case scenario I could possibly ever have happen to me on this deal? I think about that and there's no direct solution right away, but I'm going to go find a solution. So I think about it, whatever that worst thing that could possibly happen. Like I think of the most craziest situation. Like I have, let's say I was only able to create margins because I had a specific underwriter that we've been doing deals with for the last 5 years. And he's like, awesome. All my costs get reduced. Everything's beautiful, right? I'm going to have great margins. He gets in a terrible accident. He's gone. I no longer get any of that stuff. My deal's in the air. I have no employees, no resources. I can't get the materials at the same cost. And if I do this exact same deal, I'm going to be upside down, right? Like that would be my worst case scenario, right? So what would I need to make sure would happen in order for me to be okay? So I took that away. I think of the worst thought. I took it away and say, okay, if I needed to sell, can I have like a buyer lined up to buy this at a certain price? Do I have someone that will take over this project or help me fulfill it? Do I have someone that even if I can come out even if I didn't make any money for X amount of time, but I'd still be okay? Or bring in a partner to hold the carrying costs and allow us to have time and equity positions or something else to be okay again. If that's my solution, like I need to start figuring that out right now. Now, those things might not ever happen. And it's not to be paranoid or any of those other things, but because we've had crazy things happen. I had a partner whose house burnt down in the middle of a remodel because the people that it was bought from used an extension wire like through the roofing of the house to connect some like electrical lining. An extension cord that is not industrial or outdoor. Like there's no reason it should have been anywhere inside of the house. You know what I mean? Like they ran it through a wall and through like random fire. And that one's simple, right? That's insurance. But like, what do you do about that time? That project was supposed to make money. It was supposed to do X, Y, Z. Now all of a sudden we're in this weathering the storm, right? Trying to figure it out. So thinking of Armageddon, putting a plan in place and then tucking it away and then doing what you're supposed to do anyways. And hopefully it'll never happen. But making sure that you have a smoking gun to protect you is fundamental. Not being paranoid, but being prepared.
Yeah, dude. So good. Cool. Let's do our last one here, Daniel. This has been so good. So this is, we call like the 5-year mirror question. So the first part's pretty easy. What would you give yourself 5 years ago in 2020? What would Daniel tell himself now? And the second part is, what would 2030 Daniel tell Daniel today?
The first one's easy. The first one is definitely think big. Thinking big is huge. Don't think in growing 10% over a year, 20% over a year. Think of what crazy possibilities there are. There'll be another story I have to tell you about a billionaire I met that just broke my thinking. But thinking big, just thinking the most possible things that you can do, right? Never underestimating yourself in what's possible and never overestimating what you can handle. And what I mean by that is what you can handle by yourself, right? So thinking that you can do everything and all things by yourself, it's not true. But not thinking that it's possible because it's by yourself is also not true. So all of these things are possible if you're willing to delegate have partners, have a team, and be able to get there. You can think the craziest things in the world and they're all possible. You can make them happen, but not by yourself.
Man, that's good. Dude, okay. Yeah, that's different. Again, another question you answered way different than most other people, so I like it. Okay, cool. Any more to add on the sort of like Daniel in 2030?
2030, man. The Daniel in 2030, and I think I'm working on this still now too, and I believe is important, is that still be proud of what you've done so far, and don't forget to continue enjoying what you've built.
Today, this has been so good. Like, we usually don't go this long, but when somebody's giving you guys this much gold, I let it keep flowing, let it keep going. So Daniel's gave so much value today, man. Daniel, last one. Yeah, as we wrap it up, where could people find you if they're interested in OPM or just want to learn more from you? Where can they find you?
Absolutely. OPMmastery.io. You're more than welcome to Google us. But also, I would highly recommend go through Casey and their team directly. They have a link for you guys to book a call with our teams to diagnose the issues or just to kind of have a chat and see if this is the right fit for you guys. Make sure that we give you guys information you're looking for and just figure out what's the best situation for you. If it's us or maybe it's another direction, we're more than happy to assess any situation and see how we can help.
Awesome. All right, Daniel, man, well, thank you again for coming on today. And I will share the links so you guys can connect with Daniel and get you guys hooked up. He's helping us. He's helping so many people. He was helping people at a Revive Method. True go-giver. Thanks again, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Casey. We appreciate you.
If you're listening to this because you're chasing freedom, not just for yourself, but for your family, then don't let this just be the background noise. Take action. Shoot me a DM. Reach out. Find a property. Make a call. Remember, small moves today create the life your future self and your family will thank you for tomorrow.